I have decided I'm going to give a different lecture than I had originally planned. And there's quite a bit in this. And it's, I was originally going to give you the lecture on selecting projects, strategically selecting projects. But I felt that I need to pull a lot of this together for you. And the best way I could do this was by taking an example of how I did it in the past. So I'll just jump down to our presentation area. And here we are, and we'll just bring out the PowerPoints. So now, even though I can only see one person, a simi, and no one else, I probably see the shock on your faces. And I say, oh, Jesus, Mark, this is the 10th of February, 2004. And this is 23rd of February, 2021. Where are you going? This stuff is 17 years old. Where are you going, for crying out loud? And the simple answer is this stuff doesn't change. The fundamentals of project management, as I've said, haven't changed in, even since before I started in project management, and that was going back well into the 80s. And what I'm going to describe to you would be classically defined as what's known as a waterfall model. Now, there have been numerous variants of that over the years. But fundamentally, when you break down all these other variants of the waterfall model, it still just shows a sequence of activities in sequence. That's what it really comes down to. And once you keep that in mind, it keeps the whole project methodology, no matter where you are, whatever systems you encounter, it keeps them simple. When you break that down, what other variations of these models you'll see. So it all comes down to work activities, essentially. But to give you the background to this, I had been working on, as I said, in projects since the 80s, specifically since around 1987. That's when I first went into project management or into software engineering, and having left my previous profession in accountancy. I was a cost and management accountant, and I moved into software because I'd been using software applications and they started to take off, and I liked software, and particularly the applications, and found that I had a bit of an aptitude. It was okay. I knew how to turn on and off a computer. And this is going back now to the very early days of MS-DOS, the precursor to Windows. Now, this is where you had to do everything manually on a computer, if so to speak. You had to learn all these various commands and so on. But anyway, make a long story even longer, I then moved into in software engineering. So I enjoyed writing code and testing it and so on. And eventually I started to run small projects, various kind of dipping the toe in the water. But what enabled us to do it was that we had methodologies. And the one Ericsson, the company I worked with at the time, was called the system they called PROPS, Project Management Operations Procedures. And they or another way of looking at it, another name that went on it was Project Management Processes. And there were quite a number of books. Do I even have the original set of books here? No, I have them up in my attic, actually. But there was a number of small books, about half the size of an A4 size paper, if you can imagine that. But we had this phenomenally large a U-shaped map that we put on the wall, a big poster size thing, which had all our project methodology and phases and milestones and toll gates and all this. Now I'll be explaining these as we go along here. So, and a number of other large companies tried to license it, IBM being one of them. I think Microsoft at one stage were interested in Ericsson's methodologies. But all of the telecoms companies had something. And the reason why they were more advanced than most other industries was the rate of change with things in telecommunications. So we had to be very methodical about the way we did things. So we had to put on our engineering heads onto us to um, develop these systems that everyone would understand. Certainly all those, even in production where we were making the systems, we had production plants, one in Ireland, well, we had several in Sweden and then scattered around the world, physically making telephone exchanges and indeed telephones themselves. And as time went on anyway, they became second nature to us. And it was one of the first times I was introduced to earned value. Now we will be coming back to this earned value. This is part of your assignment essentially. And we'll be going through that in far more detail in the next couple of weeks to help you get through your final assignment. But yes, we had to develop these systems, and we had been engineering backgrounds. We were very black and white, so you have to have a process for this. And they became more and more complicated, but the fundamentals didn't change. Then eventually I moved on to this company called Meteor. I joined another Finnish company in the meantime, and then eventually ended up with Meteor. I was head of products and services with Meteor, introducing new technology and new offerings to customers. But when I started there in February or in November 2003, one of the first things I noticed was that it was very much ad hoc. Things were done, things got done, but there was it was heavily reliant on individuals and their abilities. And you say, well, what's wrong with that? There was a lack of coordination and there was a lack of focus, and it was almost like, to use the expression, a hand to mouth existence. So we fumbled and foosted and got things done, and that works. But at least it shows us that it showed me that there is a lot to be done here, other than my own regular job of developing new products and services. We need to embrace or connect with the rest of the organization. So if you think of this, even from your organizational learning perspective, we had to put some form and structure in place. Now, I had already, as I said, gotten quite a lot of experience in these areas and running projects and multiple projects. And I saw how project offices ran. And in my previous job, I ran the whole project organization as head of project management with Techman. And so I know how to, at least from my experiences, how to pull things together and get more involvement across the different functions. So now I was in my previous roles or occupations, we were supplying to the telecoms industry. In other words, to the likes of Vodafone, O2 back then. Meteor was one of our customers, and so on, and a whole range of customers, operators, as they're referred to in the business, across Europe and indeed across the globe. And now I have moved from the supplier to the customer side. So now I was working with Meteor, who was an operator. And so I was seeing the stuff that was coming in from the likes of Ericsson's, Nokia's, Motorola's, and so on, Alcatel, all these other big suppliers. On top of that, while we're in there as an operator, it was almost like a startup. There was, I don't know, probably 100, 150 people working there at the time in the early days. And we're building it up and building it up. And that was my job, to build new products and services, get them out there, get more customers on board. But I was constrained by the availability of various technologies. So I had to pull all this together, and you had a big IT department in a different building. And we had also the network operator, network operations, which is like the NASA room. And you had to have passwords to get in there because it was so secure, and you couldn't have anyone pressing buttons inside there in case you bring down the network and all hell would break loose. So you had these, and then of course in our building you had you had HR, you had finance, you had marketing, and we worked quite closely with marketing and the products and services. And of course you had ourselves, the products and services. So my team would have been familiar with project management. We use Microsoft Project to some extent, just to get things done and have some level of traceability. So with that, I decided that, well, why not use stuff that I'd learned previously? But most importantly, one of the first things I did was introduced technology roadmap. And I had written about this as in my MBA dissertation. So I said, maybe this is a time to introduce the stuff that I'd used before that I now put into in an academic world, written a dissertation on the thing. So why not put this into practice again? Okay, so it wasn't just some academic piece of stuff. This was stuff that I actually used, and I said, well, maybe this might fit in this organization. So that's why I came up with this thing known as the roadmap in the telecoms world. And really, now don't worry, this isn't the roadmap. One of the reasons, this is some of the theory behind it. We have, an environment out there. We have the competitors, we have customers and all that sort of stuff. And we have ourselves then as the organization, if you look at it inside here. So what I was trying to do was look at some ways of pulling all our operations and so on, and how we could acquire, select new technologies, know what to do. Business processes need to be improved, develop a strategy, or define what the organizational strategy was, and then put stuff in place to build a strategy. So this was the theory behind what I was attempting to do at the time, at least. And this is just another variation of the same thing, that where, and I say know who, the technical level. So we needed to know what technologies we had, what the capabilities of the organization, the competencies, our core competencies, what we were good at, and so on. And then build it up through into the product. So when we know our technologies, we can then develop our products or identify products based on technologies that we know would be coming down the road. I'll just enlarge the screen for you. So yeah, building these technologies based on what we already know and what technologies we could predict were coming down. Then we could say, well, we might be able to develop these new services based on this new technology. And then we put business cases in place, which would be working at the business level in the organization. So now we know what we have, we know what we'd like to do. Now let's put the business case or the business model. And that's why we're putting all this together for you guys in business, enterprise, and project management to show why they're so intrinsically linked. And this is a very good example of your course in one diagram for all intents and purposes. And well, at least my part of it anyway. And so what we did, first thing I looked at, I said, well, we have products and services on one end, and we have customers on the other end. So in between, there's a lot of stuff happens. So I started looking, I said, well, what we have marketing research, we have product marketing, we have marketing communications, sales, and customer care. Now that might look like these are all the drivers, but they weren't. And because if you look down here in this big box down here, you also have the IT department. You have technical operations, which I described, we call it the NOC, Network Operations Center. And of course, you have finance. And we actually had a spin-off department, which was known as fraud, because let's face it, you know the way you get hacked at the moment and spammed and so on and so forth. We were having that 20 years ago in telecommunications, and even further back, people hacking into the network and getting free calls or spamming on the network and sending out messages and so on back then. So, we're a long time around. So we've seen it all before. It's just that now they've become a little bit more sophisticated. So we had a fraud department, which was kind of looking at when there was an attack on the system, how would we notice, and we could spot revenue trends. I mean, literally in real time, we could see if things were spiking in revenue. That doesn't make sense. What's happening here? And then to find that we're being attacked from some country, outside the EU, trying to hit our network at peak times, get in under the radar when we might be busy on a Friday afternoon. You'd have a lot of traffic in the business area. telecoms, as people are closing down business for the weekend and so on and so forth. So you'd see volumes of traffic going up, and the attackers or hackers would try to sneak in under the radar there. So we'd watch this and we'd look at revenues and see where the revenues are going. Then if we see a certain location, we'd say there's something not right there, and immediately block it down or cut it off, generally speaking. So we'd look at these kind of fraud instances as well. So we had all these other departments there. So fundamentally, we said that these all have to come together in some kind of orchestrated, coordinated way to make sense and get our products to our customers such that we make money and grow the network. That was our overall overarching brief: grow the network. So you had the initial phase of getting into the buying the network, rolling out the masts and getting things done there. Then you had us, the guys that fattened the cow, so to speak, and well, that wouldn't be altogether correct, would it? Yeah, we built out the network even further and started to launch more and more, a rapid growth phase in the middle. And then the third phase, which I only stayed for a while because our job was done, was where we had all the products out there. Now it was a case of attracting more and more customers and getting more and more revenue coming in based on customers and the odd new piece of technology coming in. And that went well, and eventually the company was sold, and it's now belonged to Three Ireland and Three subsumed. Air, I think it was. Yeah, Air bought it, and they made a horse's ass of it. Anyway, that's a whole other story. So this thing here, what you're seeing in front of you, I hope you can see this somewhere clearly at least. This was, I spent a few weeks putting this together. And it was what's known as our technology, products and services roadmap. Now, I'll briefly explain what was on. My starting point was, what do we have? What's our network infrastructure? And how quickly is it upgrading now? How many of these base stations, the masts that you see for mobile phones, how many of those we're going to roll out? And that'll give us an idea of the coverage we're going to have in the country. And what kind of technology were these guys going to be using? That was the first place. So I pulled out and I spoke to the network operations manager, director, and we sat down and he said, this is roughly the pace at which we're rolling out our network and the coverage we're going to have. And said, great, that will show us for the next 2 years, but I'm really only interested in the next 12 months. Let's just break it down to something that we can work with. And then I looked at what technology platforms were we using, and you might see things here, modem interoperability, and that was for connecting systems. Now, a little bit beyond what the ordinary consumer would see. Prepaid roaming, what else do we have? Multi-service platforms, and then voice email platforms. These are all these were literally like the computers you have inside in the access center, but just a little bit more powerful, hooked into our network. And we could, based on those, hardware and operating systems, we could then build products. And this is where my team came in. And we said, based on the availability of different technologies, then we could actually develop these and introduce these systems, these new systems. If I take one there for end user usability, for example. That was a project, and actual fact, that was one of my little pet projects. And what it meant was that when in the earlier days, when you bought a mobile phone and you got a SIM, you had to manually put in data into it, your messaging number and all this sort of stuff. There was a lot of stuff had to be done manually. Now you just download your app, from Google Store or Google Play, log in, and it'll automatically back them up and then download them onto your new phone and all that stuff. That wasn't there. This was the precursor to that. So what we did was we developed simple applications on your SIM where you just put in your password and it automatically downloaded, or your PIN, downloaded basic applications and setups onto your phone, so you can make phone calls, store messages and forward messages and all that sort of stuff. Your personal details and maybe an email or something like that might be put in there. So we put those kind of things in place. Now, this one I changed.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you hear me?
Sorry, Sandra.
Yeah, just out of my curiosity, I want to know: have you done this through any kind of planning softwares or manually?
This was all done manually.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought it's like something like MSP or Primavera or something like that.
MS what?
I thought it is something like Microsoft projects or Primavera, some tools like that, you know.
Oh no, not that. This is what we did. This was the very early setup. This was like developing a strategy, if you
Okay.
follow me, to
Yeah.
get this roadmap. So when we're looking at these tools, these were actual physical pieces of software that other
As you
companies
see
might
the
be
time
developing.
frame on, I mean, on top of that, like the quarters you have put there, either it's using some sort of softwares, but no, it's manual.
It is manual, yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
and actually, this roadmap, I developed that in Microsoft uh, PowerPoint. PowerPoint is
Okay.
what I did just to get. My goal was to get one page of everything that was going to happen in the organization into one page that people could understand, and that's why we have 4 layers there. The our basic hardware, then we have an operating system, and then we have applications on the operating system, and out here then we'd say, well, what are the new phones in this case? But this is like a computerized system. So can you see the kind of connection there? And this has just been done on a much bigger scale. If you look at some of these infotainment, for example, you know, what kind, downloading music and small GIF files, and they weren't quite video because technology wasn't there back then. You know, wireless LAN for using our phones as wireless hotspots and so on. These were all types of areas. Enhanced email. So, for example, on email, you get it to your phone, and you know, a couple of years earlier, when I used to travel down to Shannon, I used to get emails coming in, and I used to press my phone while I was driving, and I had an audio version of my email, and it asked me, did I want to respond? And I'd press another button, say, yeah, I'll respond to that email now. And it created an MP3 file, and I just hit send on my phone. So even it wasn't quite hands-free, but it was close to. It was long before legislation was brought in about hands-free mobiles and all that. So I was actually answering, doing work while I was driving for 2.5 hours to work in some mornings, and same in the evenings coming home. But this was the kind of stuff we were developing. So we're enhancing all of that, you know, these types of systems. So these were, you know, and dynamic profiling, which was looking at people in you know, as a customer, what were their preferences in terms of their content, what were they looking at, and what way were they using their phone, and all this sort of stuff. So we're putting all these technologies. This one up here, additional content. If the truth be told, that was originally called adult content, and essentially porn on mobiles. We never introduced it, but it was, and the reason I included it was because it was a huge revenue generator for other networks. But here in Ireland, being who we are, that was really not a runner. But as part of my job was to identify revenue generating products and services. So yeah, we never went down that route. Different story nowadays, but that's neither here nor there. But we had other types of content, ringtone, music, you know, downloading music clips and all that sort of stuff, just audio files. That's how old it was. And then, of course, we had these things up here. As another part of our stuff was, you know, voice, data, premium SMS and MMS. So, you know, your premium SMS and MMSs, you know, getting your, you know, your fortune tellers cards and predicting numbers for your lottery and all that sort of stuff. You know, people pay for all of that sort of stuff. You know, getting your star signs, whatever your star sign might be, and get a reading from that, and so on. So we had all that sort of stuff, and they were huge money spinners. You would be surprised at the amount. I actually hired a guy dedicated just to premium SMS and MMS in terms of pricing and bringing on different content. And we share the revenue with the content supplier and ourselves. But it was a massive growth in terms of revenue. So that was all our side of it inside here. And then up here, and you had, what was the handset technology? So what way were the phones evolving? So we had just very basic phones. Then we started to get into phones that could could play video or download video and so on. So these are and you had high end and low end, and the high end would be very expensive phones where you could actually watch TV maybe on it. Back in those days, you could as well, or some TV channels, and download some video content and watch stuff in your hands. But generally speaking, we didn't have that for everyone because it was expensive, and our customer segments weren't in that space. Were more of the texters primarily. And then we had these things like push to talk was simply like your walkie-talkie feature where you can literally press a button and talk to people free of charge, like a walkie-talkie. It never took off here in this side of the world, but it was extremely popular in the States, for example. We used to call it the soccer mom function. So we had better ideas of the types of phones that were coming out and the technologies that were going to become more available. So the suppliers, the manufacturers, again, in this case, it would have been the Nokias, Ericssons, Motorola's, Huawei didn't even exist back then. I actually met the country manager. He was only coming into Ireland to sell hardware for the networks, not even phones. This was way back then. So these were the kind of, and so I put a timeline based on having discussed this with the guys, what availability, what technology, and roughly when would all this be available. So that gave us a roadmap. Okay. So great, we had something now, a picture. We had an operational diagram of roughly where we're going to be going for the next 12 months. So how to get there was my other challenge. So I looked at the way we're doing things. I said, right, we need to say, right, these are all the departments in the company. We have IT, commercial support, customer care, and so on. You have technical operations, we had finance, we had HR, we had corporate and regulatory affairs department, which was quite active because you had to have terms and conditions, and you had to also make sure that you weren't breaking any legislation and rules and so on. We had issues there in all networks that when we were starting out. Of course, we had sales, we had direct sales online, and we also had sales through our partner companies like Carrefour and Warehouse, and Extravision was another one of our big partners, and of course our IT department. And we said, but when we combine all of these, this is what we need to produce our products based on the roadmap. And here I just said, effective process implementation is achieved through all involvement, through the involvement of all the functional areas to deliver compelling products which exceed customer expectations. That's all. That's all I said, right? Everyone has to get involved in this. And that was pretty basic. You might say, well, Matt, that sounds basic. It is, but try doing it. That's where the real challenge comes in. So then all I do is say, well, for us to be able to do that, we need to do all of this together to provide it to our customers. A simple explanation. Inputs, what we have to do, and the outputs to our customers. So where did that go from there? This is where it all culminated, and this is what's important for you guys in terms of project management. I put together a simple model, right? And I said the model had to work in these phases. So we start from zero. The whole team, all the different functional areas, the different departments, we'd come together. We'd look at what are the products and services? What do we want to introduce now? Does it fit with the roadmap? These are basic questions. And put together a business case. And then we went up to I went up to the senior managers, the directors, vice presidents, and said, here's a list of these products and services and projects that we want to run this month. We want to start kicking them off. And that's where our business cases came in. And when we did our homework and we went up and we presented, they either said yes or no, yes or no. 99% of the time, they said yes. Why was that? Because we were able to explain it very clearly, simple technology, and the return on investment, because essentially we're going to them and asking them for money to fund these projects. So they were like investment bankers for all intents and purposes, backers, champions, call them what you will. There's all these different names in project methodology. And they gave their seal of approval. And then we went into the feasibility and said, well, how are we going to do this? And so on. And then we'd go back and we'd have another meeting and we'd say, yes, we have everything in place. We have all the elements we need. We can, and this is how long it's going to take. And this is precisely how much it's going to cost. Because the first draft up here, although it was fairly accurate, we'd go into more detail. That's why we'd have a feasibility, essentially the planning phase, feasibility planning phase. And we go into a lot more detail to get, make sure we've covered everything, that there was nothing that we missed and so on. And then the logical sequence of how we're going to do things. Then we went off and did it. We implemented the product and service insofar as we got it ready and we tested it. And then we decide, right, now we're ready to go to commercial deployment. So commercial deployment then was literally, we sent it out and customers could now use it. It was there available, put it up on our website, did all our launches, marketing campaigns and so on. And that was the commercial deployment. And then we had, when it was deployed, we had what was known as in-service support and maintenance. And that was, we track the use of it. We tracked the amount of money that it was making, the revenues, and we tracked the number of customers that were, adding to or buying the service or product each week and each month. So we get an idea, and that, like everything else, it goes off and then eventually fades off. People either find something new, a replacement, and at that point we try and delay what we call tollgate 5. Tollgate 5 will say, right, that's it, we'll retire this product. We'll come out with the next version of it, or we have something totally different and that's more appealing. So we know, say, that's it, cut it off, no more money spent on this. But we try and, as we say, bleed it as much as possible, get as much revenue. We might reduce the price, we might go on some small marketing campaign, and we'd even cost that out. We'd have a business case. Is it worth continuing to develop this? So we were constantly looking at it, and that was the feedback loop. So we were getting indicators, when this product was beginning to fade, and now we must come out with plan our next replacement or whatever. So this was the overall project methodology. So we had decisions. If it fitted the roadmap, we went in and we put together, and then if we had a basic plan and tollgate, and that's as simple as we say here, a decision, go or no go. We could get to the end of feasibility and look at it and say that this technology is, there is a newer technology coming down the road. We stop the project here because we need to wait maybe 3 months, 6 months, possibly a year, and say, this better or newer technology will make this product far more effective, and we'll wait until then. Or we could be down here with implementation, and our competitors might come out with something, and release it, and we're almost ready to go to commercial deployment, saying, well, what's the point? Kill it. There's no point in going out now because our customers have already gone and opted for our competitor's version and so on. So there's, hard decisions had to be made. That's why they're at the end of each of these phases, we'd have to decide whether we go ahead into the next phase or not. So that was a general meeting of everyone involved in the project, and we took a decision to go ahead or not based on all the parameters. And that's what our project management. Now, I know this text is going to be small on your screen, probably. I'm not sure how well or not you can read it, but the key point to this, and I won't go through all of it, all of them, but we had decision points here. So if we say tollgate 0, the product or service or improvement project, is it in line essentially with the company's strategy and business objectives? The concept is feasible and is in line with the product services roadmap. And then the consumer's benefit is identifiable, measurable, and consumer market is, I can't even read that. Put on my glasses myself now. So yeah, the consumer market, do we have some kind of testing that if people would be, is it necessary to do that? Oftentimes it wasn't, because whatever new products and services, it was new to the customer, so we'd have to launch it and we'd have already an idea whether they'd like it or not. And oftentimes we were launching products and services that were similar to what our competitors would have had, but we do it differently, more effectively, or more cost effectively, and so on, which is quite legitimate in business. So these were the very first questions. So we could have our we'd have either fortnightly or monthly meetings. Usually they were fortnightly, and some say, hey, we've got this other new product. I was contacted by a supplier and they'd like to introduce this product. And with first question, does it fit with the roadmap? Yeah, it's in there. It's probably in the infotainment area. It'll come in, it'll fit in there and so on. And then we'd say, okay, we'll consider that. If not, then we didn't consider it. It could be an absolute gold mine. It could be a winning product or service, but if it didn't fit with the roadmap, then we didn't include it. And that we had to put discipline, because sometimes people come and say, but look, Mark, this is really good. Others are doing this, but it's not within our roadmap because it'll cause problems. It'll divert resources, and we need to keep focused on what we were actually doing. So because we had that guiding document of a roadmap, it gave us a bit of comfort in knowing that we were going in the right directions and we were achieving our objectives. And then we had the exec, so if we had some ideas or some concepts and come in, we'd have a roundtable talk. So, the IT people were there, the network operations, of course, ourselves from products and services, and indeed marketing and the finance, HR, fraud, and they were all sitting around at the meeting. So we all had an idea of what had to be done, and we'd all be in agreement. And like, for example, if we had this new products and services, this is going to take us 11 weeks to introduce. The HR people say, okay, if we're all in agreement then on this, we know that in 11 weeks, we have to have our customer care people trained in this new. So we need to start our work maybe in week 7 and preparing manuals and operational documents such that customer care will be able to support the product when it's released to the customer. Or if we needed to train any people in particular technology during the implementation of it, that's what their brief. So they went off on their little HR version of the project. Sales and marketing would say, well, we need to start on week 5. We need to get to know what the product is, what it'll look like, how it, or the service, whatever the case may be, what it looks like, how the customer will have to use it. So we need to be able to communicate to the customer. So they'd have to put their communications project and their plans in place such that on week 11, when we said we'd have it ready, marketing are ready to launch and release everything literally at the push of a button. So pushing stuff out on our website, putting ads in on TV and radio, and so on and so on and so on. So all of this was well orchestrated. So we, as an exit point to Tollgate 1, you'd have an executive summary, basically an overview of what the thing is. You'd have a high-level business case, roughly how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and when you get the money back, and the potential revenue that this is going to generate. So now, as I said, these were, you could say there might be guesswork, but we had spreadsheets that and I still have some of them actually from the early days, where we do a lot of hypothesis testing, hence your business model canvas. So you see, we were actually doing this stuff before the business model canvas was freaking even invented. That's where it came from. The kind of work that telecoms companies and service providers were doing inspired or informed the business model canvas writer, and he comes from the same background, as it happens, as myself, and that's and he packaged it very well, and that's what we've done. But the business case, we would have all these assumptions, potential uptake, levels of competition, the way previous products or similar products would have behaved, and so on. So we populated all those what if statements inside in Excel, and they fed into another sheet, which then did some calculations and ended up with a small diagram of a return on investment. So when we break even, when we start to make profit, and we took those bits of information out into this high-level business case. And then we'd have an outline plan, roughly how many, if it's 11 weeks for this project, if we start in week 10, then we should technically be finished by week 21. So we have it broken down how much time it take and spend, how long it will take to implement it, how long it will take to test it, and then when we can go commercial on week 21. And then project owner was assigned. So we identified a project manager. This is the interesting part. A few people would have had project management experience. Certainly all my team, they were all competent project managers. They'd worked in other organizations, worked on projects all over the place, and of course myself. So what we did, rather than try and take control of everything, because you'd have all these politics going on inside an organization. So, oh, look, products and services over there, they're trying to control and run everything. What I did was I flipped it on its head and I said, right, if it was a very technical project, can we get someone from the IT department that has some project management experience or knowledge and use the methodology and let them run the project? So we shared it around. And my guys, most of the time, acted as mentors, because the whole idea from an organization perspective was that we wanted everyone to be familiar with how we're doing things. So there was none of this, I would say, grandstanding by us. I was putting the tools in place such that everyone could see what was happening and use the tools and become familiar with them and the processes and so on, and take ownership of the projects. And once we had the methodologies in place, people then had the comfort, no, this is how I do my job as a project manager. That's why we put these things in place. So these were the entry. So when we had the project owner, we had a high level business case and the executive summary and so on. We could have this for maybe 6, 8, 15 different concepts of projects at the monthly meeting. Then I'd go to the following week, I'd go to the directors and vice presidents, say, right, these are the current projects we're considering over the next 4 weeks or 8 weeks and so on, or we can start them here and we want to take them on. So we were looking at the resource. So, and oftentimes we'd have to, we were expanding the organization. So we're hiring more and more people. So they were saying to me, do we need to hire more people, for example, Mark, or do we need what expansions and so on. So based on these estimates and the fact that we have so many people committed to existing projects, yeah, we could hire some more people in IT and 2 more people in sales and marketing and 3 people in customer care and so on, and we can get more work done this way and so on. They were the kind of conversations I was having with the senior management, well, the presidents, vice presidents. So that was the kind of structure. Now the rest of this document kind of describes, the same thing, more detailed information. But what's important about it are these points here. So we had decision points, the entry and exit criteria for each of them. Now, if we look at here, for example, at the end of the feasibility, what was the exit criteria? And bear in mind that we only move from one phase into the next phase. So we only moved from feasibility into implementation when we had agreement. And we say, yes, we can sign off. And the reason we had the agreement was because these are the criteria. And if you look at these again, I'll have to put on my glasses. The writing is quite a smaller side. The criteria would have been, we'd update the product definition document, what it was. So a detailed business case, pricing, investment budgets, and whatever other non-budgetary elements we might need. Internal project costs if we're and estimated revenue. So a very thorough business case or business model, and then a detailed product level project plan. So here's the product, we're going to start on this day, this is how much we need, these are the people we need, when we need them, how much it's going to cost us, and when we're going to release it. So a thorough business plan, all the activities, in other words, had been costed out and planned. And then we'd have the functional sub-project as identified, document and agreed, and then resources were allocated. So we get a buy-in from the different functions. Yes, we'll free up these people to work on that project and these people to work on that project, and they were committed. So we'd have agreement. So the following documents are reviewed and approved by the project team. So these cross-functional members, representatives from each of these cross-functions, formed the project team, and we would agree on these. So we had a requirements spec. We knew exactly what had to be done. We had a project plan, when it has to be done. We had a marketing and communications plan. So they prepared their plan, say, right, based on your project plan, we now have a plan to market and sell the product. And then we had functional specifications and network impact study. Now, these are pure technical stuff within our area, but functional specification, yeah, how the thing operates and works. And then finally, the network impact study. If we were introducing something that required a lot of data, downloading video, for example, and so on, did we have the bandwidth? What impact would it have on the system if we're transmitting a lot more data? Think of it today like your broadband systems. If you're downloading a lot of videos, you're going to impact other users in your house, for example, or in the location. And similarly, the levels of upload. And that's a pet hate of mine right now at the moment, for example. Now, I know I have good transmission rates. I've doubled my upload speed. My upload now is nearly 50 megabits per second. So I should be getting good quality going up. My download, strangely, should be 500 megabits download, but I'm only getting around 120, 180, might hit 200. So there's something seriously wrong. As a consequence, Virgin Meteor are having to call out to me next week and see, is there a fault on the line? They can't identify anything wrong with the setups there, networks and all that I've got in place. But anyway, you get my point. You can have by introducing, so for example, all this COVID lockdown has caused systems to degrade. There's so much traffic on the network, so many people downloading from schools, the school kids, secondary school, ourselves doing this sort of stuff. You have multiple episodes. There's phenomenal capacity being utilized on the network, so something has to suffer. So systems begin to. So we carry out these studies. And sometimes we might go down to the Aran Islands and carry out a study to see what would happen on a network where you had low usage, or we might use Tala Shopping Centre. Strangely enough, was it the Crow's Nest in Tala or whatever? But we had certain base stations or transmitters were designated into certain areas such that we could close off that area and only have traffic within that area, so we could see the impact if we introduced some new free service, for example, and people start to use it. We could see the spikes on it's like your CPU performance. If you add more applications, does your CPU performance go up and down? It's exactly that type of thing. So that was a network impact study. So going through all these, so we had these entry-exit criteria, and that's the important thing. As I say, like every process, you input stuff, you do stuff, and you have output. And this is exactly what the principle of, as you can see, tollgate 2, did we have all the documents ready before we went into implementation? Yes, we then went off and implemented it. Have we everything done? Check it off, show me the proof, these are the documents, these are the exit criteria. So that's how we went through each of the projects like that. Now, I strongly suggest you guys to go through this yourselves, okay? Look at or at least, just let me come back here. Look at the concepts and don't worry if you don't understand what this document, that document is. They're pretty self-explanatory, but it tells you up here, the descriptors are up here. Entry, exit. They're flexible. So no matter what industry you're in or what business you're in, you could change out those words and put in your own words or your own documents, for example. One of the simple ways I had of controlling this, I don't know if it's up on Moodle, but it may well be. But I had a spreadsheet, and all I had was a couple of conditional statements inside there. So for each project, are all these documents done? Green, 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 and if there was a red there, then we didn't pass the toll gate, and we put in the data, so I could see the status of the projects at the toll gates, and that's all I needed to see. And then we had other data, of course, on the project itself. But just when I was running the portfolio of all these different projects, I could see at any particular point in time whether the project is at a different toll gate or at the planned toll gate, and if it had been passed or not. And that was just a spreadsheet. Remember, we didn't have very sophisticated technologies back then. And then in service, again, we looked at the performance of the entry criteria and then the exit criteria, that the continuous performance measurement. As I said, we produced a matrix, a profitability matrix. Is this still making money? Contribution to ARPU, you're saying, what the freaking hell is ARPU? Average revenue per user. That was one of the key metrics in telecommunications. It still is today. So how much people are spending. So if you introduce a new service where they're spending money on that, and you might say, well, if you're buying 20 euros credit, how would you know? But we do know. We can see in what you're using your €20 credit on, and how quickly you're using it, and what kind of things are you using, Messenger, WhatsApp today. Back then we could see whether you're using it to download material, and so on, so on. So we could break it down between voice and data, and then based on all the data, we could absolutely identify what data you were using. It's like today, every one of you have mobile phones. Mobile phone operators can see what sites you're visiting, how frequently you're visiting, and so on, so on, so on. So, and everything is recorded. Okay, not to put you frightened. There's nothing illegal about it. These are basic requirements so as we can gather the data, and it's, as I said, it's stored. All that data is stored, so we can get profiles of people, and we can see. That's why, for example, there's been so much investment into 5G networks. Why? It's all data. We're using more and more internet resources, and we want the stuff to be faster, and it is an awful lot faster. The technology is phenomenal. There's nothing else other than that. It's just pure data transmission. So that's what we looked at in terms of the customer service. So again, the focus on objects. Why did we put all these? So we had to know that we're selecting the right projects to invest in. In other words, optimizing our return on investment. So when we spent money, we didn't spend money on stupid projects or projects that weren't on our products and services roadmap. We spent money on anything that was tied into our linked to our products and services roadmap. So then we could evaluate whether this was a good investment or not. And trust me, there were some really stupid proposals being offered to us by companies. And because we had a roadmap in place, we were able to refuse meeting with them. We had one guy who wanted to, if he bought so many sandwiches in a particular sandwich bar in City West of Dublin, that you would get credit on your phone. There was some really stupid things going on at the time. But anyway, it didn't get very far, obviously. So we knew what our projects, so we had a total visibility of who was doing what on all the projects. Everyone was assigned to some kind of project work. So we knew what people were doing. And they were delighted to do it because they had a sense of direction. They knew what was expected of them. Maximize the value of our product portfolio, contribution to ARPU, tracked and monitored use. So we could see what types of projects were getting, were generating the revenue, how much revenue they were generating, and then we were able to fine tune those and say, well, let's keep working on these type of infotainment apps and so on. Let's not focus too much more on for argument's sake, voicemail and so on. Not many people want to use voicemail. We will use it, not we'll pull back on this. So we were able to fine tune our products. This is your basic business technique. You know, your cash cow, rising star, question mark, and dog. You know, your Boston matrix, for example. So what we're using all the stuff that you've learned in business, and we use it, but we didn't call it that. In our case, it was profitability matrix. What was a cash cow? What was a rising star? And of course, then this is a dog, kill it off. We don't want to use this anymore. It's not making us any money. And then effectively align our corporate strategy with our product portfolio. So we knew our strategic fit. So we knew that based on our roadmap that we all agreed on. It wasn't just Mark Cashin, it wasn't just Mark Cashin's department. It was everyone in the organization. I just drew it together to help everyone get some clarity. And based on that, then we had an idea for the next 12 months. And then we knew where we were going the 12 months after that as well, because the roadmap expanded out. And we're getting strangely to the end of it. And this is just another way of representing the same information. So financial marketing technology products. And this is where all our team comes together again, as I say. Functional management team worked on the project. We had strategic objectives and business objectives. And the linkage was our project methodology. This is how we achieved these objectives. So input documents, product definitions, project milestone reports, and profitability matrix. So we could see how efficiently, whether we were hitting our targets. So every time we defined a project, we defined our phases. Then we were able to come back and evaluate, did we hit the dates and how accurate were we in our planning? So we were learning as we were going along what we did well in one project, why such and such a project failed or didn't go ahead, or why it was delayed, or why it went over budget. So we were able to extract all that information to see that we were achieving our objectives in the roadmap, but we're also doing it efficiently in certain areas, not all areas. Sometimes we had some problem projects, and we had to, suffer loss, so to speak. But at least we had a way of tracking it and so on. So these were all the fundamentals, and it took only a few weeks to put this in place, and everyone bought into it. So in the first meetings we were called, so this is methodology. We want everyone involved. You're all going to have opportunities to run these projects yourselves. We're not going to do it, and so on. So everyone got an opportunity to shine, so to speak, or to learn something new, learn a new skill set, how to manage projects and so on, and to do so safely because they were coached and mentored by more experienced project managers. And that's how we built momentum inside the organization, and that's how we learned. So that's how Meteor's system helped the organization to learn and how to stay focused and use simple methodology. Now, all of this now can be done pretty much on systems today, phased, star phase, Microsoft project, toll gates projects. What's this? Is it Workday? I think is another one of these projects. Assign tasks and so on to people. And so they're all just variations of exactly the same theme. And you could read hundreds of project management books, and they all come down to the same fundamentals. And you do have to customize and develop systems that suit your organization. There's no one size fits all, so to speak, because you'll all have different types of situations that you want to develop. And the last part of it then was our measurability, of course. Then so when we measured these, so basically we took our the data from all the different projects and performances and so on, and to identify where we actually hitting our strategies. So we measured stuff. We were able to measure how we were performing, how that each project was performing, and its contribution to the overall profitability of the company. And based on that, then we could see how quickly the company was growing, how that we could predict the number of new customers that were going to come on based on our performance within the organization, products and services performance. And therefore we could see then the direction things needed to move and so on. And that, as it happens, is the last slide. So there's 15 slides there, which condensed all that we've talked about to date. So I've kind of turned it on its head. I've shown you how this all gels together, and in terms of a methodology, why it works, where it impacts different parts of an organization. And I said it replaced the original planned. I'll just close these down here. So now, yeah, there we are back. So essentially, it replaced the original planned lecture, which I'll probably come back to next week. I might have something up on your PowerPoints later on the week or on your Moodle page, but at least now I'm hoping that this gives some more clarity, understanding as to the connectivity between project management and business modeling and enterprise as such. So how it all pulls together from an organization perspective and from pure project management, and showed you a methodology, one that proven and still works to this day. So the next one we look at a little bit more higher level on the how we strategically select projects. So a lot of the stuff we have here we've introduced in terms of strategically what's good for the company and so on and so forth, and how we go about it. Some additional, how to say, concepts to consider. So, folks, I'm not going to go into a second lecture at this point in time. Do you guys have any questions or comments or insults or jokes even? Are you all still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, folks. Good. I don't have any video on. Anyway, I as I said, I assume no. Any questions? No.
Mark, I just have a question about something on the Moodle page.
Yeah.
I just need to. Oh, it's the videos on. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to open it now at the same time. It's the videos that are all in a row, but they're not in order, and oh yeah, it's just hard to know which ones. It's all the BMC videos. There's like maybe 10 or 15 of them there, but they're in alphabetical order. Is there any way you could like change the name so we know which one's first and second?
I can do. I'm just coming in there as well, Dave, just to this is inside in your lecture notes in
Yeah.
that area. And if I look down, where are they gone?
It's just a part 1 business model canvas overview. They're all like really
yes.
short videos, but I just kind of keep forgetting which one comes after which.
Oh, they're in a reasonable. Okay. Okay. Let me have a look at them. I'll come back and I'll change them around slightly because I'll try and map them to the structure of the map. So the first two, for example, the first one obviously is the business model canvas itself. That's a generic one. The next one then would really be the value proposition. What is the idea? What's the concept? What's the product or service you want to introduce? Okay, that would be the next one really. And then the customer segments. That's the third part. So I'll put them in the flow of how they would appear on the business model canvas. But one way of doing it is if you look at if you had a sheet of the business model canvas out in front of you there, rough diagram, and ignoring the first one is the business model canvas, and then you can see, well, where does value proposition that fits in here. So let me do it that way for you, and I'll put something together. So save you all the butter and just put
that'd be
kind of
perfect.
structure. Will that work?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thanks.
No worries at all. Anyone else any questions? No? We're all happy then. As I said, I'm not going to keep you for 2 hours because there's quite a lot in that stuff. But seriously, it would be very worthwhile going back over that and just look at the form and structure. And just let me have another peep into your Moodle page again. Canvas. I'm just trying to see if there's something in here. Value project. I'm just looking for a specific spreadsheet if it's in there. Chart now. Yes, that down. Oh no, it doesn't give it there. I'll see if I can dig out another document. Project schedule example. I'll have a look down. There's something that I oh yeah, there is actually inside in commercial products and services master project plan. It's a spreadsheet document. It kind of describes it. It's the actual sheet I would have used where I see all the different states of different projects and so on. Hence, it was called the master plan done the spreadsheet. So it's another example there. Do I have the document chart? No. Yeah, that anyway. And project plans and business case. And there's an actual example, I think the project BC skeleton update. So it's the business case. This is the kind of tool that we use to develop the business case itself and pull all the information. Don't spend too much time on it. Just quickly look, see structure, assumptions, calculations and outputs, that kind of thing. Don't spend time trying to figure out all of it, but it's there for your use anyway. So you've quite a lot of material there, folks. And I will realign those. I'll put a document or something together just to show the sequence of those video clips. And yeah, we will leave it then. I'll let you work on your next assignment. The next one is the group assignment, which is important. You're pretty much finished or close to finishing your individual one now anyway. And so on Thursday, work with your group assignment. I'll put some more material up onto Moodle for you. and I'll give you the links and so on. Everything I'll do will be on video anyway, so I'll send you on the link. Other than that, then, folks, I will let you go, and we'll see you face to face. Hopefully, more cameras turned on this time next week. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Adios,
Bye.
folks. Take it easy. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.